Okay, everyone, here's a greater look at Orgonite as produced by Carl Hans Satanist Wells. And this is a unit that supposedly was made in the United States. And of course, there's no way of telling what's in here. There doesn't seem to be anything that is classically what's considered Orgonite building stones and other things. Of course, we don't know what was put in this gunk here. We don't really find any deposits of anything in terms of, is there powders in here like he claims to make. I think his formula that he gave to the public was a bunch of bull. I think it was a typical Welts lie. And what he actually produced was his satanic goop, his devilonics reality that he lived in. So I'm not sure there's anything of major in here except something that's very toxic. Now, generally, resins are not black. So he colored this to hide some of the wiring, which I'll show you right now. And it's unlikely he put anything else in there in terms of the stones or metals. There may be some sort of powder in there. There was talk of using white gold powder, etc. But it seems to me that's a very expensive process. He was depending mostly on his faulty electronics. Now, this is what we found. Now, we showed this in the other one, and here's what it looks like here. Let's see if we can hold that there. It's basically just a bar here with two ends on it, and what they've done is coiled copper around it. And there's nothing special here. Let's pull this apart. It's just, they just curled wire around it. And between this, now I don't know if this is an actual part or not, but it looks like this may have been wound at a factory or something. But basically, it's just copper wire. It has these two ends on it, and that's in between. So it's like a little spool, and this spool is connected up to wires that go into and from the circuit. So that's what is there. And in between here, as I mentioned before, it's like this with the two wires. In the center here is that little tube that basically looks like stainless steel or even aluminum tube that is between there. He's not using brass or copper or anything else for the tube itself. Probably costs too much, knowing how cheap they try and make everything. And it's got two of these. Here's another one right here you can see on the other side. And it's the exact same thing. It's this coil here is on either sides of that tube, and I don't know if that's supposed to condense. Now, again, you use a lot of non-electric items, and then you use electric with it. Doesn't make much sense if you're condensing what's considered orgone through the process as well. So doesn't make much sense there with all that, but the tube was supposed to shoot out orgone energy. Apparently, the energy went through this tube into supposedly the circuit. Now, how you could handle that in terms of dealing electromagnetic energy and shooting it out. And this is nothing more than a goofball placebo thing and basically a cheap design there. So it makes no sense whatsoever in terms of the technology. And of course, Wells had no technical background at all. This guy was a liar and a cheat. He was basically, when I worked with him, he claimed to be a contractor living in Georgia trying to make a living, which he had great difficulties doing that. I met him through his runic course that we was offering the Armenin system, which was based in where he used to live in Austria. And he took the 18 runes and, of course, took all that information from the Armenin order and a particular book called Rune Magic by Spiesmager, and pretty much made it into his own little very cheapy course, which was basically an 8.5 by 11 paper that he printed on both sides and then folded it up into a little pamphlet, a very typically cheap European way of doing things instead of spending a little money and time to do it. And I forget what these courses sold for, $18 or so, and he had 18 different courses of rehashing Rune Magic by Spiesmager, and of course the Armenin runes created by the List, who was basically a pre-Nazi. Of course, you're not going to remember Nazis, it's all the same. They always had that thoughts, and Austrians are known to be very strange and rotten people. In general, even to this day, which still have swastikas all over their graveyards and everything else. And of course, we allow them to get away with that. So the whole idea is that this is the culture he came from, and then was trying to make a living in the United States doing some sort of contractor work, I guess, and not very successfully. And then, of course, because of his association with me, was contacted and pretty much given a lot of success through the basic alleged criminal network that he was involved with. So it's an interesting story with all that, but this is basically what is inside of Orgonite, is this kind of, I don't think they put anything in here. That would be way too much work to even put powders and stuff. So what they're doing is hiding this little circuit in a bunch of gunk, which is very typically done to hide what you're doing, particularly when you have nothing. But it's an old trick. I mean, you don't want people to copy what you're doing by just buying a particular instrument of yours. So you hide it like that. But is there anything in this? Well, I don't know. It puts out some pretty nasty energies in general. So very nasty, very negative. But this is basically what they're saying, what is inside of this Orgonite. Again, this is directly from Welch's company when he was alive. So this is what they sent out, and his cronies particularly did in the UK, where I got this from, who all worked together in their cabal, I allege, of criminal activity. And of course, who attacked me along with the many people that work for these criminals that get paid by them. This is how they support themselves. Don't think that the criminals don't need ways to make money other than robbing and raping and selling dope and using children and all sorts of sex slaves. I mean, this is what these people are connected to. This is what this stuff was made from. Romania and Bulgaria, known for their criminal activities, and which are basically criminal states to this day. So all of that is what goes on there. So this gives you a little more insight of what this junk is, of what's put in there. But this, buyer beware, people. This is the kind of nonsense you run into. You think somebody's doing something and you don't know what's been. How are you supposed to find out? I found out in very different, interesting ways the whole reality of the satanic movement and of who these people were, who they were connected to, particularly people like Thorson, Edred Thorson, and Flowers, as what his real name is, who were basically members of the Temple of Set, and they were Satanist Nazis with Michael Aquino, a whole organization of sewer rats. But people don't know that. You get Edred Thorson's book, I guess it's Stephen Flowers, and I read through it very carefully because I knew what he was into, and I didn't find anything in there that would slant things. But, he considers Odin and the Norse gods to be satanic in nature, which is, of course, a very typical way of the way certain groups of people work, very typical of the German segments of this, their Arabic viewpoint of these things, very typical misunderstanding. And of course, they want to label anything non-Christian as evil. So this is part of the process here. So he didn't talk too much about him and a guy named Chris Chisholm and, of course, Michael Aquino. They're all involved in this demonic, satanic groups that are slanted towards Satanism. So, which is amusing because they think they're, well, first of all, Aryans are not white people, they're Arabs. They come from Persia or Iran. And if you look at your typical Aryan, certainly they didn't call themselves white just for that reason, because they ain't white. They are Middle Easterners. So the whole idea is that this is the kind of stuff. Now, we cut a little bit into this. It's very hard and will take a lot of time. It's not worth it to try and cut into this further. There's nothing really in there that we can find anywhere else. And as I said, if there's a powder in here or something else, it's very hard to tell from this colored thing. There could be, I don't know if that texture says anything, but it's hard to say. I haven't worked a lot with this kind of powdered resin stuff. I mean, resin is toxic plastic, and that's all it is. And to think you're going to get positive energies out of toxic plastic is a little bit ridiculous. So there's really nothing to learn, but that's really the secret hidden guts of how that little orgone channeling energy and electrifying it was done through that particular process. And I have other machines of his I'm going to be taking apart here, and what we'll do is try and compare the different, and remember, it's orgonite. It's a contrived, sick, devious substance out of the mind of Satanist Welts, and has nothing to do with orgone from Wilhelm Reich and others who were actually accumulating energies out of the atmosphere, which is considered to be very dangerous now because of the toxicity of it. So that's the latest and greatest on this. We're going to be going to our next tool here soon, so do check that as well.